Well, this might be the grand finale. So this is the meaning of a fraction, part 6, understanding fractions and seeing how they show up on a ruler. One of the things we've talked about a lot in this meaning of a fraction is that the top number of a fraction and the bottom of number of a fraction, each of them has a very special meaning. Bottom number of a fraction is always how many parts does it take to make a whole. Top number of a fraction is always how many of those parts am I talking about. So let's look at this ruler again. We've already looked at how this ruler, we can see it as being broken into sixteenths. Then we bundled those in another video, and we found that we could make eighths, bundled our eighths, we made quarters, bundled our quarters into twos, and we made halves. Now, here's a neat way of looking at a ruler, because notice that those lines between the 0 mark on the ruler and the 1 mark on the ruler are different lengths. There's a reason for that, or I like to think this might be a way of thinking about that. If we think of all of those black lines as breaking the inch into quarters, into sixteenths, because there are 16 little pieces if I count up all of those, we noticed on the previous video that if I start to bundle those together using red, then what I'm doing now is highlighting the different points where we get bundles of 2/16, turning this into eighths, breaking the ruler into eighths. Then we saw that we can bundle our eighths into groups of 2. So bundle these two into groups of 2, and now there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. If there's 4 of them, then we're talking about quarters. Now, we also saw that we can take our quarters and bundle 2 of those to get this picture where we've got our inch broken into halves. So now look at all those lines, all of those small black lines, 16 of them. The inch is broken into 16 parts. But if you look, for example, here, this line we can think of as being, if we look at the black lines, 2/16. So this position on the ruler we can think of as being 2/16, counting the black pieces, which are 16ths, and we've got 2 of them. But we notice that it also matches up with a red line. So that must mean it's not only got a name in terms of the black lines of 16ths, but it's also got a red name, and the red are eighths. So this is also the 1/8 position on the ruler. This line right here, how many 16ths is that? Well, there's 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16. 4/16 is this position on the ruler. But look at this. There's also a red mark here. So this is not got only one name, a number of 16ths, looking at the black lines, but I can also think about red lines. Red lines are eighths. How many eighths does it take to get here? Well, here's 1/8, 2/8. So that's 2/8. So this position right here, so far it's got 2 names, 4/16, but we could also call it 2/8. And those are the same thing. But look at this. There's another name. It also matches up with a yellow line. So not only has this got a name using the black lines, which are 16ths, and a name using the red lines, which are eighths, but it's also got a name using the yellow line, which is quarters. How many quarters to get me to here? Well, that's just 1. So that position on the ruler has actually got 3 different names. 4/16, which is exactly the same thing as 2/8, which is exactly the same thing as 1/4. And I like to think that's why that line on the ruler is a little longer than some of the others, because it doesn't have only one name, it doesn't have two names, it's got three names. The more names, the longer the line. Now, the next line, this one right here, it's only got black on it. Doesn't have any red, doesn't have any yellow, doesn't have any blue. This has only got one name, 5/16. That's the name of that line. Only one name. Short line, because only a short list of names, only one name. Now, let's jump ahead down the ruler a bit to this place. So, matches up with a black line. So how many, or what is the name of this position on the ruler using the black 16ths? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is 8/16 on the ruler. But does it have any other names? There's a red line there, so it must have a red name. Red names all have an 8 on the bottom because they're 8s. How many 8s to get me there? 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. This matches up with 4/8. So that's got two names so far, but we're not stopping there because we notice it also has a yellow line on it. So it must have a yellow name, which are quarters. 4 parts make a whole. How many quarters to bring me up to that line? Well, here's quarter number 1. Here's quarter number 2. 2 quarters to bring me there. But we're not done yet. There's also a blue line here. That means it must have a blue name. And the blue breaks the inch into halves. So this must also have a name that's a certain number of halves. How many halves to get me there? Well, that's 1. Halves are really big, so I only need 1 to get me there. 1/2 will bring me, ooh, that's a mess. 1/2. So this line right here has got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 different names. That's why that half line in the middle of the fraction, the middle of the inch, is such a long line. It doesn't have one name. It doesn't even have two. It's got more than 3. It's got 4 different names. Let's jump right to the end of the ruler now and look at this position. So this position right here, black lines are 16ths. How many do we have? 16. But there's also a red mark there. Red lines are 8s. How many 8s to bring me to here? 8/8. Okay. What about yellow? I see a yellow. So yellow lines are quarters. So how many quarters to bring me to this place? 4 quarters. But it's also got a blue line right there. Blue lines are halves. 2 make a whole. How many to bring me to that place? 2 halves. 2 halves make a whole. Wow. So, now I think I've moved my ruler a little bit. It looks a little out of sync. But one way of looking at a ruler and seeing short lines, lines that are a little longer, lines that are a little longer, and lines like this one right here, which are super long lines, the longer the line, the more names it has, because the one name for this line that I haven't even given it yet, we've said 16/16, 8/8, 4 quarters, 2 halves, and here's the other final name for it, 1 whole. This line right here has 5 names. This line on the other end, we could say it's got 5 names too. How many 16ths is that black line? Well, no 16ths. How many 8s is this black line? Well, that's no 8s. How many quarters? No quarters. How many halves? No halves. How many wholes? No wholes. 5 names for that too. They've all got zeros because it really says I've got nothing. But this is one way of looking at a ruler. The longer the line, the more names it has. The shorter the line, the fewer names it has.